someone told you a country had 72 tribes and 73 living languages, what would you expect? Conflict, division, a nation constantly struggling to stay together. History suggests you probably should, but in the heart of southern Africa, there's a country that has quietly proven the opposite for more than 60 years. Welcome to Zambia. You may have heard of Victoria Falls, where the Zambezi River crashes into one of the largest waterfalls on Earth, or perhaps South Luangwa National Park, the birthplace of the walking safari, where elephants, lions, and leopards still roam freely across vast wilderness. These places are breathtaking, and they're part of what makes Zambia so extraordinary. But they aren't the story that surprised me the most. The real story begins with a simple question. How did one of Africa's most culturally diverse nations become one of its most peaceful? Let's find out. And if Zambia changes the way you see Africa, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. To understand Zambia, it's worth following a river. Not just any river, but the Zambezi, Africa's fourth longest river, stretching more than 2,500 kilometers across the continent. Along its journey, it gathers smaller rivers, cuts through forests and floodplains, plunges over Victoria Falls, and continues toward the Indian Ocean. For centuries, long before borders were ever drawn on a map, the Zambezi was already connecting people. That idea of connection appears almost everywhere you look in Zambia. Unlike many countries shaped by mountain ranges or deserts that naturally separate communities, much of Zambia is made up of rolling plateaus, open savannas, fertile valleys, and an intricate network of rivers. It is also one of the few countries in the world bordered by 8 different neighbors, sitting almost at the very heart of southern Africa. Rather than becoming a dead end, Zambia became a crossroads. For generations, traders, farmers, fishermen, and entire communities moved through these landscapes, exchanging not only goods but also languages, traditions, music, and ideas. The rivers made that possible. The Zambezi wasn't simply a source of water. It was a highway long before paved roads existed. Communities settled along its banks because that's where life flourished. Fish were plentiful. The soil was fertile. Seasonal floods nourished the land instead of destroying it. As villages grew, relationships grew with them. Different peoples met not because they were forced to, but because geography kept bringing them together. Even today, Zambia's greatest landmarks remind you how deeply nature has shaped the country. The Zambezi gives birth to Victoria Falls, known locally as Mosi Oatunya. It means the smoke that thunders. The Luangwa Valley became one of Africa's richest wildlife ecosystems. Vast wetlands like the Kafu Flats support millions of animals and birds, while sustaining local communities that have depended on these landscapes for generations. None of these places exist in isolation. They're all chapters of the same story, written by water over thousands of years. Perhaps that's why Zambia never feels like a country held together by a single city or a single culture. It feels connected by something older than either of those. Long before anyone called this place Zambia, its rivers were already teaching people a simple lesson. Life is easier when it flows together than apart, and that makes the country's next chapter even more remarkable. Geography may have brought people into contact with one another, but geography alone can't explain how 72 tribes, speaking 73 different languages, eventually learned to see themselves as one nation. In many ways, Zambia was never supposed to be easy to unite. Long before the country existed, This land was home to dozens of kingdoms and communities, each with its own language, customs, and way of life. The Bemba flourished in the north. The Lozi built a powerful kingdom on the floodplains of the Zambezi. The Ngoni arrived from the south during the great migrations of the 19th century. None of them imagined they would one day wake up as citizens of the same country. But when British colonial rule brought these different peoples together under the name Northern Rhodesia, it created a territory, not yet a nation. Everything changed on October 24th, 1964, when Zambia gained its independence from Britain. For many countries, independence marked the end of one chapter. For Zambia, it was the beginning of an even more difficult one. Building roads, schools, and hospitals would take time. Building trust between more than 70 ethnic groups would take much longer. Just think about it. How do you convince people with different histories, different languages, and different traditions that they all belong to the same future? Zambia's first president, Kenneth Kaunda, believed the answer wasn't to erase those differences, but to rise above them. His vision was captured in 4 simple words: one Zambia, one nation. They weren't meant to replace tribal identity with national identity. They were meant to allow both to exist together. That's also why Zambia kept English as its official language after independence. It wasn't the mother tongue of the largest ethnic group, which made it neutral ground, a practical bridge that allowed every community to meet without placing one above another. Was it a risk? Absolutely. History offers countless examples where diversity became division instead of strength. Yet Zambia quietly chose a different path, and choosing that path didn't end with independence. It became a habit throughout the decades that followed. Ethnic diversity never became the force that tore the nation apart. More than 60 years after independence, Zambia remains one of the very few countries in the region that has never experienced a civil war. It's a way of sharing a story, explaining family roots, or introducing traditions that have been passed down for generations. And that's exactly where Zambia's story becomes even more remarkable, because peace wasn't preserved only in parliament or written into the constitution. It was protected much closer to home. Keeping a country together is one thing. Making every community feel that it still belongs is something else entirely. That's where Zambia made one of its most remarkable choices. Instead of asking centuries-old traditions to disappear in the name of modernization, it allowed them to continue living alongside the modern state. Today, Zambia officially recognizes more than 280 traditional chiefs, each representing a different community somewhere across the country. At first, that number sounds almost impossible to imagine. More than 280 traditional leaders in one modern republic. Yet that's exactly what makes Zambia so unusual. These chiefs don't govern the country or write national laws. Their role is different. They protect customary traditions, oversee community land held under customary tenure, preserve local customs, and help pass cultural knowledge from one generation to the next. In many communities, they remain deeply respected voices, not because the law forces people to respect them, but because generations have grown up trusting them as guardians of their history and identity. Think about that for a moment. In many parts of the world, becoming modern meant leaving traditional leadership behind. In Zambia, modern institutions grew alongside them. Rather than replacing one system with another, the country found a way for both to coexist. You can actually see the results. Travel from one province to another, and the language changes. The traditional houses may look different. Local customs, ceremonies, even the way communities organize daily life can change from one region to the next. Yet none of those differences feel as though they're competing with one another. They're simply different expressions of the same country. Perhaps that's because people were never asked to choose between their local identity and their national one. A Lozi could remain proudly Lozi. A Bemba could remain proudly Bemba. A Tonga could remain proudly Tonga. And at the same time, all of them could simply be Zambian. That's much harder than it sounds, because when people believe their own identity is respected, they're often far more willing to respect someone else's. Maybe that's one of the quiet reasons Zambia's diversity has become one of its greatest strengths instead of one of its deepest divisions. But traditions don't survive because chiefs protect them alone. They survive because ordinary people continue living them every single day. Traditions don't survive because chiefs protect them alone. They survive because ordinary people continue living them every single day. And in Zambia, that's something you begin to notice almost immediately. Walk through a neighborhood in Lusaka, Kitwe, or Ndola, and you'll hear several languages before you've finished one street. A shopkeeper greets a customer in Nyanja, turns to answer a colleague in Bemba, then switches effortlessly to English when a visitor asks for directions. Nobody pauses to think about it. Nobody finds it unusual. In a country with 73 living languages, moving naturally between 2 or 3 languages has simply become part of everyday life. Think about that for a moment. Language isn't a barrier here. More often, it's a bridge. The same is true inside many Zambian families. In the larger cities, especially, marriages between different ethnic groups are increasingly common. A child may have a Lozi father, a Bemba mother, study in English, speak Nyanja with neighborhood friends, and still grow up feeling connected to every part of that identity, rather than replacing one culture with another. Families often learn to celebrate both. It's one of the quiet ways Zambia's diversity continues to strengthen itself, one generation at a time. You can see that shared identity around the dinner table too. No matter which province you visit, one dish appears almost everywhere. In Shima, made from finely ground maize and eaten with vegetables, fish, chicken, beef, or local relishes, it's much more than Zambia's national food. Every region prepares the side dishes a little differently. Recipes change, flavors change, but the meal itself remains the same. It's one of those small, everyday traditions that quietly reminds people they belong to the same country, even when their languages and customs are different. And then there are the markets. If you really want to understand Zambia, don't start in a museum. Start in a local market. Places like Soweto Market in Lusaka are more than places to buy food. Farmers arrive from surrounding villages before sunrise carrying tomatoes, cassava, groundnuts, dried fish, sweet potatoes, and baskets woven by hand. Conversations move effortlessly between languages. Bargaining is usually accompanied by laughter. Someone you have never met may recommend which mangoes are sweetest that morning or insist you taste something before you buy it. It's difficult to stay a stranger for very long. Visitors often notice something else. People don't seem to be in a hurry to end a conversation. Whether you're asking for directions, buying fruit, or waiting for a bus, it's common for a simple question to turn into a genuine conversation. Curiosity comes naturally. Where are you from? Is this your first time in Zambia? How are you finding the country so far? Those questions rarely feel rehearsed. More often, they sound as though people are genuinely pleased. You've come. Can you picture it? You arrive expecting to observe Zambia. Instead, Zambia starts including you in the conversation. Perhaps that's the quiet thread connecting everything we've seen so far. The rivers brought people together. History gave them a shared nation. Traditional leaders protected local identities, but it's these ordinary moments, sharing a meal, switching between languages, chatting with someone in a market, welcoming a visitor without hesitation that keep those ideas alive. Culture isn't preserved only during great ceremonies. In Zambia, it's preserved in thousands of small moments that happen every single day, often without anyone even noticing. If you happen to visit Western Zambia around the end of the rainy season, you may notice something unusual long before the ceremony itself begins. The vast Barat's floodplain slowly disappears beneath rising water. Villages that stood on dry ground only weeks earlier become surrounded by the Zambezi. For the Lozi people, this isn't an unexpected disaster. It's a rhythm they have lived with for centuries. And when the river rises, so does the kingdom. The Kuambaka ceremony begins when the Litunga, king of the Lozi, leaves his palace at Lealui and travels to higher ground at Limulunga. Waiting for him is the Nalakwanda, a royal barge so large that dozens of paddlers are needed to move it through the floodwaters. Painted in striking black and white stripes, the boat carries a giant elephant on top, a symbol of the royal authority of the Lozi kingdom. As enormous drums known as Maoma echo across the floodplain, the paddlers move in perfect rhythm, their oars striking the water together while thousands of people gather along the banks, watching a tradition that has remained remarkably unchanged for generations. It's an extraordinary sight, but what makes it remarkable isn't the size of the boat, it's the reason the boat moves at all. The river decides, not the calendar, not the government. For centuries, life here has followed the rhythm of the Zambezi, and every Kuambaka is a reminder that nature has always been the kingdom's oldest ruler. Travel nearly 600 kilometers east, and you'll witness something completely different. Every February, thousands of Ngoni people gather for the Insikwala ceremony near Chipata. The celebration marks the first harvest of the season, but before the dancing begins, everyone waits for a single moment. The paramount chief enters carrying a spear, surrounded by warriors dressed in traditional animal skins and carrying shields that reflect the military heritage of the Ngoni people. Drums grow louder, songs spread through the crowd. Then comes the symbolic presentation of the first fruits of the harvest, a reminder that before anyone celebrates abundance, they first acknowledge where it came from. Look closely, and you'll notice something else. Standing in the crowd are grandparents explaining each step of the ceremony to children who have seen it many times before. Young boys imitate the dancers on the edge of the gathering. Teenage girls sing songs they learn from their mothers and grandmothers. Nobody hands them a history book. They learn by being there, by watching, by listening, by joining in. That's how traditions survive, not because they're protected behind glass, but because every generation is invited to become part of them. Perhaps that's why Zambia's cultural heritage still feels so alive today. It isn't stored inside museums or remembered only on national holidays. It's carried in songs that people still know by heart, in drums whose rhythms still signal the beginning of a ceremony, in royal barges that still cross the floodplain, and in children who quietly grow into the next generation of storytellers without even realizing they're learning history. And maybe, just maybe, that's another reason a country with so many different identities has remained so remarkably united, because every community keeps telling its own story, and every story is allowed to continue. By the time you reach Zambia's great wilderness, you begin to notice something unexpected. It doesn't feel empty, it feels alive. Not because there are more animals than people, but because the rhythm of nature still quietly shapes life across much of the country, just as it has for thousands of years. Take South Luangwa National Park, often called one of the greatest wildlife destinations in Africa. It is home to one of the continent's highest concentrations of leopards. So much so that guides often say, if you're patient enough, the bush will eventually introduce you to one. As the sun disappears behind the trees, safari vehicles switch on their spotlight, and suddenly two golden eyes reflect back from the darkness. A leopard steps silently onto the road, completely unhurried, before disappearing into the night as though it had never been there. Further south, along the mighty Zambezi River, enormous herds of elephants cross the water with astonishing confidence. Calves stay close beside their mothers while older elephants form a loose circle around them, using their bodies as moving shields against the current. Nearby, pods of hippos spend the day submerged almost entirely beneath the surface, while Nile crocodiles wait patiently along the riverbanks, barely moving for hours at a time. Travel north to Kasanka National Park, and you may witness one of the greatest wildlife spectacles on Earth every year. Usually between October and December, around 10 million straw-colored fruit bats arrive from across Central Africa. Just before sunset, the forest suddenly comes alive. At first, only a few bats appear above the treetops, then hundreds, then thousands. Within minutes, the sky darkens beneath millions of beating wings, stretching from one horizon to the other. For nearly an hour, they stream overhead in what many wildlife biologists consider the largest mammal migration on the planet. And then there is Bangweulu Wetlands. At first glance, they seem almost endless: water, reeds, and open sky blending into one another. But if you wait long enough, you might spot one of Africa's most extraordinary birds, standing nearly 1.5 meters tall, with a massive shoe-shaped bill and an almost prehistoric appearance. The shoebill often remains perfectly still for so long that visitors begin to wonder if it's real at all. Then, in a single, lightning-fast movement, it strikes the water to catch a lungfish before becoming motionless once again. Isn't it incredible? One country and landscapes so different they almost feel like separate worlds. Yet perhaps the most remarkable thing isn't any single animal. It's the fact that so much of this still exists across Zambia. Communities, conservation organizations, safari guides, researchers, and park rangers all play a role in protecting these landscapes. Many of the guides leading visitors through the bush today grew up in villages bordering the national parks. They don't simply memorize the names of animals. They recognize individual elephant families, identify birds by their calls before they're ever seen, and can read a trail of footprints the way others read a newspaper. Walk beside one of them, and something quietly changes. You stop searching for animals. You start noticing relationships, why the impala suddenly freeze, why the baboons have gone silent, why every giraffe is staring in the same direction. Out here, every sound means something. Every footprint tells a story. Every silence does too. And perhaps that's the final piece of Zambia's story. Long before there was one nation, there was one landscape. The rivers, the floodplains, the forests, and the savannas never belonged to a single tribe. Every generation depended on the same seasons, watched the same wildlife, and drew life from the same land. Maybe that's why Zambia has never simply been a collection of different peoples living side by side. It has always been a country sharing the same home. The longer we've traveled through Zambia, the more one thing becomes clear. This isn't a country trying to impress you. It doesn't compete to be the richest, the busiest, or the most visited place in Africa. Instead, quietly reminds you that a nation can be built in another way, one conversation at a time, one generation at a time, one choice at a time. Perhaps that's why so many people arrive expecting to remember the waterfalls or the wildlife, but leave remembering the people instead. Because long after you've forgotten how high Victoria Falls is, or how many elephants you saw on safari, you'll probably still remember the stranger who smiled at you in a village market, the rhythm of drums echoing across a floodplain, or the feeling of standing beneath a sky filled with millions of wings. Some places are beautiful because of what they have. Others are unforgettable because of how they make you feel. Zambia somehow becomes both. So now I'd love to ask you something. What surprised you the most about Zambia? Was it the 72 tribes living together in peace, a tradition that has survived for centuries? Or was it something completely unexpected? Share your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely read every one of them. And if you enjoy discovering the stories behind the map, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Beyond Travel. Until our next journey, remember this: the world's most extraordinary places aren't always the loudest ones. Sometimes they're simply the ones with the most remarkable stories waiting to be told.